जानवी जी, मैं आपको होस्ट बना रहा हूँ।
जी जी मनीष जी।
All right, so we get started, and today's session is intermittent sports, and I will also like the participants to please keep it interactive, keep sending out your responses and definitely your questions. So intermittent, mainly racket sports and also field-based sports. Amber says she's unable to hear me. What about the others?
You're audible.
Okay, all right. Better now, Amber? Okay, so the quick overview of what we'll be covering today. Of course not, I'm not on mute. Okay, we're moving on. Everybody else can hear me, right? So a brief, we're going to just skim through what could be the energy pathways where we are looking at intermittent sports. And, of course, we've already touched upon some of these aspects: sports food, energy drink. Today, there'll be a new concept, which is, I don't know how many of you heard of high molecular carbohydrate, HMC or HMW actually. How many of you heard of this or used it? Any responses? Okay, so no responses, so I'll continue. Also, I think with intermittent sports, we have definitely got to look on. Okay, Luna says no. So yeah, that will be an interesting concept. So I've also been trying to add newer, points. Andrew also says no. Okay, so I think with every sports specific topic, I've been trying to include some very interesting new concepts so that it is not a repetition, and I hope that you guys also will benefit from that. So definitely I think with a higher intensity workout comes the buildup of lactic acid, and I think that's very crucial, especially in these sports, and also the rise in core body temperature, which we've already talked about in hydration chapter at length. And along with delayed onset muscle soreness goes your muscle cramps, and quite common in many of these athletes. Of course, one little bit of research I have read on the wearable technology and how it is helping, even now with artificial intelligence, how it is helping these kind of sports. And definitely, again, revisiting the supplementation guidelines in a very brief. In fact, I'm just going to only talk about one case study about badminton, because I worked a lot on racket sports. All right, so maybe I should ask you guys. So please, can we have some responses to which will be the sports that will come in intermittent category? Be it racket sports, team sports. Can we have some responses? Just to keep some interaction. But today I have over 55 slides, so I'll definitely need over an hour. Team sports, yes. Badminton sports, yes, you wish. Badminton, racket sports, yes, very good. Right now in the Olympics, we've had a lot of racket sports shining, from badminton, table tennis. Anybody else? No responses yet. Team sports, guys. Squash, yes. Again, very intense. Tennis. What about team sports? So in India, we say football. I think, it's got several other names, from soccer to, right? So from cricket, football. Then we have, of course, from table tennis, squash. Okay. So intermittent sports has these. Kabaddi, interesting. Thank you. I think that's also recently come into the limelight. Yes. Have you, Amber, do you work with Kabaddi players? Okay. All right. So moving on. Now, the most important aspect when we talk of these intermittent requirement, one characteristic difference is I know somebody in the past lecture actually asked me to highlight and said, can you talk about energy systems? But, just touching upon the brief gist of what you really need to know. In an intermittent sports where there is, a requirement of high intensity workout, particularly be it, a rally with, badminton to, from any sport in a field-based setting where you have team sports where based on the kind of position of the player where they run around a lot, sprinting is involved. So, from dribbling to so many aspects where there is, continued workout where the intensity is so high, the glycolysis, if you remember, I'm not sure if I've included that again. If you see the glycolysis where there is a breakdown of the glucose, which is basically the end product of whatever you eat in the body for our energy to come as a currency, ATP, you need glucose. Now that is your last end product of digestion. Now, when that glucose is being broken down at a moderate intensity, which is basically about that, 45 to 60 or whatever we studied even in the previous lectures, at that intensity, the body has got a steady supply of oxygen where the lungs are able to pump enough air or oxygen to the working muscle, where the body is able to meet the demand. But the minute the intensity of the exercise increases, what we say VO2 max, or typically we say 70% VO2 max, 80% VO2 max, the minute it goes above that, that oxygen supply gets inadequate, meaning that it is called anaerobic glycolysis. So when oxygen is available, glycolysis is the breakdown of glucose. Glyco means glucose, and lysis means breakdown. So when the glucose is being broken down and you have the conversion of the pyruvate, and that is what goes into acetyl coenzyme A into tricarboxylic acid cycle, where you have different B vitamins. If you remember, we studied in the chapter of vitamins and minerals, you have several coenzymes, from thymine, TPP, thymine pyrophosphate, FMN, flavin monodinucleotide or whatever, FMN, and then you have niacin, NAD, NADP. So you have these various coenzymes which are involved in the tricarboxylic acid cycle, and that is what invariably they convert into the energy or the ATP. So when there is no oxygen, automatically the anaerobic pathway, meaning the pyruvate becomes lactic acid, which means that the body cannot convert that fully into the further chain, but because of the lack of the oxygen, there is a slight change, and there is it's like a road that forks. Okay, if there's oxygen available, it converts to pyruvate, goes into pyruvate becomes acetyl coenzyme A, goes into TCA cycle, or it becomes when there's lack of oxygen, obviously the demand or the working muscle is kind of doing a lot of work. So of course, we also know that at any point when we begin a high intensity workout, there is always a creatine phosphate pathway. Okay, there is the phosphagen where you have the creatine phosphate, or what we typically use as creatine monohydrate as a supplement, which we will definitely talk about. So the creatine monohydrate will donate one phosphate molecule to the ADP, adenosine diphosphate, which means that you have adenosine triphosphate. There are 3 phosphate molecules in ATP, which is what is giving us the energy in the breakdown. So that is ATP-CP pathway typically lasts for about 10 to 15 seconds. So just in the beginning. So then there is, like I always say, it's always a switch between different pathways, and the lower intensity is where you have fat oxidation, typically in endurance. Otherwise, in high intensity workout, fat burning doesn't happen. So all of those guys who are looking at L-carnitine for fat burning, it really depends, and it is a contextual, aspect. Okay, so at a higher intensity, we obviously have mainly glucose that is being broken down. So this is what I just explained to you, that yes, the creatine phosphate pathway, which really lasts only for a few seconds, okay, and it initiates high intensity sprints. So that is not really dependent on oxygen again. So if you see the classical difference between the type 1 muscle fiber, which we saw in endurance, which were oxidative, meaning that they have more mitochondria and can use oxygen and burn more fat. Okay, what we saw in, say, endurance events. I think we did that last class. Now, if you see the difference in these kind of, the fast twitch muscle fibers, and the endurance are the slow twitch. So if you see here, these muscle fibers are classically meant to be more powerful, and definitely, however, they also are not immune to continuing to contract, meaning that they will get tired out very easily. Okay, so there are again, type A and type 2A, 2B. 2A is the one where it's more oxidative, meaning that it needs oxygen, whereas again type 2B is the one that can get very, very quickly tired out. And this is again a genetic endowment. Now, the charm about the buildup of lactic acid, like we saw that in an anaerobic sprinting condition where you have a high intensity workout, you know that when glucose is being broken down and lactic acid is being formed, which is lactate, and also hydrogen ions are released. So given the time, that's why we say when we have athletes who say I have a burning sensation, I have a buildup of lactic acid, we typically have no choice but based on the fitness level of every athlete, which can be trained again, you need to kind of, we tell them that when there is a buildup of lactic acid, there's no other way but it can hinder the performance, meaning that they have to slow down, continue massaging that muscle and give it some time for recovery, because the body takes some time for that lactic acid to be recycled back into the liver, and that itself can again convert into glucose for energy. And that energy pathway is called as Cori cycle, where lactate becomes the fuel and then goes back into the liver and reconverts to glucose, which is basically going back into production of energy. Now, very important for intermittent sports is understanding again the basic cycle of the body composition remodeling. Okay, and oh my dear Lord, Amber, patience, we have 55 slides. We're coming to that. Okay, so now the body composition goals itself will be dependent on the training cycle, on the macro and mesocycle, based on what phase the athlete is in, and what season. Also, if it is a pre-competition season, you obviously cannot be looking at weight cutting or lowering the body weight and fat mass, because that is the season where your food intake will be high, because the training load is typically high. So with every sport specific skill acquirement, most important is also to continue the strength training, fitness conditioning alongside, which many times actually gets overlooked. So like I said, every phase requires short-term and long-term planning, and I think it's very important that every athlete in because if you see racket sports, they have very, very prolonged or long duration of their competitive cycle, which typically runs pretty much through the year. Unlike some, say, football, where you may get say few months off for a off season, where they can look at recovery, strength training, building of muscle mass, where it can be more possible. So again, this really depends on the sport itself. Now, for any athlete, the suggestion here is that if you are fit and you have maintained an ideal muscle mass, and you're looking at a lower fat percentage, and typically we know men have about 10 to 19%, and females between 18 and 28. So obviously, if you're an elite player and if you're playing professional, you are obviously going to be looking to be on the lower end of the range, and that is what is ideal in order to also boost your metabolic rate or your metabolism, because more muscle, obviously more metabolic rate, and definitely better performance. So it's very crucial that time and again you do revisit these tracking, for the reason that it's not the body weight that we're really interested in, but you got to kind of understand the muscle mass and lean body mass, and also the fat percentage. So today we have newer technology. Of course, dual X-ray energy absorptometry is one of the most foolproof and the gold standard, but it's also very expensive, and also very difficult to access it, not just monetarily and financially, because it's awfully expensive, where, probably professional players may not be able to afford it, where elite players may have a sponsor or have the budgets for it. You may want to track that, few months on month. Whereas bot pod, again, you just have to hold your breath and, just sit in that little cubicle. So some of them are quite cumbersome. Whereas the skin fold caliper, again, is based on several sites in the body, and you kind of translate that into equation and derive at a fat percent. Whereas now the latest technology, which is quite popular because it's portable, convenient, economical, is the bioelectrical impedance. So it's very convenient to move around this little machine, and obviously a dual electrode, like what you see in this picture, is far more better than just a handheld version, because you definitely have slightly better option. But there is a huge deviation of, even up to 20%. So you got to kind of keep at it, and you got to track it more frequently for a more definite results. So again, for intermittent sports based on the cycle, like I already told you, you can vary these macronutrients. We've dealt with this in the chapter carbohydrates, and it goes without saying that at any given point you need the fruits, vegetables, and of course proteins anywhere upwards from 1 to 2, and sometimes even more than 2 grams per kg body weight can be adjusted. And I think we've already looked at the carbohydrates. So if you see the base of the pyramid, it's quite carb heavy, and I think that's what these athletes need. And we've talked of how train low but compete high. We've talked of these newer studies which have been very conclusive in saying that it is the carbohydrate that drives the performance of an athlete. So periodization, which is a very, very must know in the field of sports, on how you can play along the composition of your intake, and you kind of mix and match your portions of carbohydrate. So if you have the time and you are looking at weight cycling, where you're looking at body composition changes, yes, you could look at bumping up your protein intake, but you could do a slightly lower carb. Whereas in the peak season, you definitely have to look at not just, like I already mentioned, other than the sport specific skills. So that's not the season where you are looking at reduced food intake, because that's energy availability again, which we've talked of in detail. Because if there is low energy availability, LEA, there's going to be a lot of other problems. And not to mention compromising the performance, because low carbohydrate and high fat diets are not useful. So during the competition, very important again that carbohydrates are not just important for fueling, but also for recovery. Now, like I said, different position of the player has a different need, and like I always say, based on how much miles do you cover, or what is the demand of your physical activity. And we kind of have to even in the same team, 2 different athletes may have a different nutrient parameter. Say, for example, somebody who's looking at, probably looking to lower fat mass or weight will obviously have a slightly different style of the food intake versus somebody who's kind of maybe looking to maintain weight or is underweight. So obviously for them, it's more crucial to look at, fueling right, and also during and post recovery, because otherwise in the peak season, it can be quite difficult, because the minute you're kind of losing weight, then that's going to be quite a challenge too. Similarly, again, if it's a competition, time, you also don't want to gain unnecessary weight, because sometimes, anytime you gain weight, you're obviously gaining fat mass, you're also gaining muscle mass. So similarly, anytime you lose weight, you're also losing fat mass, you're also losing muscle mass. So it kind of, it's the entire, it goes together. So like I said, we set goals based on the season, and the criteria here is definitely hydration, because it's very important for managing the core body temperature, which we've dealt in detail in the hydration chapter. Definitely the energy availability itself, so that you have adequate fuel for workouts. So we've talked of from carbohydrate to even creatine phosphate, which we'll talk about in the coming slides. And focus on lean body mass. Lean body mass is nothing but also the organ weight, the water weight, the bone weight, and the muscle mass. So definitely looking at maintaining your muscle mass itself. Also, yes, sometimes again to play along and be adaptive to incorporate the longer duration of not just the training, and sometimes in the particularly in the racket sports, the matches can also get prolonged. Maybe I should have asked you, maybe we'll have some recap of what we've done in carbohydrate. So for a racket sports, what, or for that matter, even a team sport, what will be the ideal carbohydrate intake for these athletes? Can we have some responses in the chat box? Oh no, Amber, 5 grams is on the lower end. Who else? Anybody else? Four grams is definitely on the lower end. Probably that is maybe in the off season. Unless until you're also cutting weight. Yeah, I think 8 grams seems more realistic. 8, 10. Okay, because these high intensity games and sports really have a higher need. So carbohydrate will be high. Okay, so 5 grams is what we will do typically if you are looking at, off season, or, when the training load is not very high. But if you see, we are saying even upwards, more than 10 also is acceptable. Okay, so yeah, Luna says anyway 5 to 12. Okay, fair enough. 7 to 10. Yes, Ashishwani also has responded. Yeah. So we play along, but it's definitely higher carbohydrate here, okay, which I already explained in that food pyramid. So protein also, definitely 1 gram upwards. And fat, we've been talking at length. The guidelines are 1 to 1.5 gram per kg body weight, okay? But I've also talked to you, in detail about the visible fats, invisible fats. So please be also aware of, because fats are also quite calorie dense. So for an athlete, based on again the macro cycle, you have to kind of plan what should be the fat intake. So maybe winter season, if it's very chilly and things like that, where you really need it, maybe yes. Otherwise, it may kind of be that much extra work to burn it off. So now talking of carbohydrate, I thought I should just touch upon something called as the HMW, which is basically the high molecular weight carbohydrate. So what comes to your mind, or if anybody, because I know some of you joined late, anybody who has heard about this or has used it personally with your clients, athletes? I'm sure it must be tasting quite insipid. I have not tasted it, but anybody who has. Okay, so basically what happens in these kind of carbohydrates or starch is that it's very easy to absorb. Okay, so when you have a high intensity workout and there is not much opportunity to allow for the food to digest, these are a value addition other than gels. I know in the past we've talked of say energy drink, sports drink, we've talked of electrolyte solutions, we've talked of gels, and I hope that you all remember that. Now, this I thought it's a good idea for me to also touch upon this, for the reason that when an athlete has when the athlete has lesser time to consume these foods, then it is extremely helpful because these absorb very quickly and they're very, very light on the stomach. So what happens is that these are basically nothing but carbohydrate itself, but it's just that, of course, it is very high glycemic index, meaning that it's very fast absorbing. It converts to glucose into the blood very, very quickly. And why is it? Because it's hypotonic, it is low osmolality, meaning that it can absorb very fast. And it can be taken, say, for example, if you have repeated, say, competition, and you kind of in between the game, and you don't have access to food, or many times it's not about just the access to food. You may not have the appetite, or sometimes in between so many things, there is not an opportunity for you to allow enough time for the food to digest, where if you're going back to court, or you're going back into the field, you are going to be very uncomfortable with food sitting in your stomach. So that way, in that situation, these can be very useful before, during, and also after for recovery. What will be the carbohydrate loading amount of carbohydrates that are recommended, guys? We've talked of glycogen also. Liver glycogen, muscle glycogen. Anybody is able to refresh our participants? Okay, is anybody sending me responses? Wow, Yashaswini, excellent, very good, well done. 600, anywhere upwards. Okay, so typically based on the need, and also children, adolescents and females, you know that females may need slightly lesser. So 8 to 10 gram per kg body weight. Yes, Luna says 5. Oh, that was the previous response. Okay, 600, very good. That is even if you say 10 gram per kg body weight into a reference man of say 60, 65 kgs. Yes, so that's the way you do math. Now, I don't know how many of you actually also paid heed to the carbohydrate loading, the meal plan which we discussed at length, which was quite bulky to eat. I don't know how many of you actually paid attention. In addition to food, bedtime snacks, in between food, banana, milk, curd, you kind of really have to be very, and in addition to all of that, you also need to eat your protein, which is not even a part of the calculated meal in that sample diet chart which we saw in the last session. So it is quite, carb heavy. Okay, so about 10 grams on an average is what we need for carbohydrate loading. And how does this get stored in the body? Glycogen, liver and muscle glycogen. Can anybody please refresh the responses? How much liver glycogen is present and how much muscle glycogen, and why it is important? Are the responses coming? Everybody is sluggish today. Any responses coming? How much liver glycogen? How much muscle glycogen? We've done all of this, guys. Okay, I'm assuming there is no response. Okay. So moving to this, what does this picture show? Okay, can we have some responses? What am I conveying here from this photograph? Come on, I'm sure you guys have. Okay, am I there? Am I audible, or the last few minutes have just gone? Ah, finally one response. Large portion of fruit. Yes, but what is, it's not the fruit alone, right? What is watermelon high in? Water. Oh dear. Okay, water, yes, it's 90% water, but from an athlete's point of view, iron. Amri, no, thanks, Amri. Yeah, not just iron. Anybody else? Potassium, iron, excellent. Okay. Okay, thanks for response. I don't know how to pronounce the name, the one who said potassium. Thank you. Nitrate. Oh yes, not bad. Right answer, Ansu. So nitric oxide, yes, it does convert to nitric oxide. But what is that I'm hinting here? Fruit sugar, fructose, not Sandhya. So I'm referring to citrulline malate here. Okay, how many of you heard of citrulline malate? Which is actually quite a popular pre-workout supplement. Okay, so citrulline malate is typically found in the portion of the white of the watermelon, which is typically thrown. And we know that citrulline malate can improve the exercise capacity because it converts, like we had a response, nitrate. Nitric oxide is very important because it's a vasodilator and improves oxygen carrying capacity. So citrulline malate is a very good pre-workout supplement. Also present in watermelon in the rind, obviously not as a supplement, the same quantity, much lower, and you can't cook with it. You need to consume it raw. So about 8 grams can be consumed each day, and it also enhances recovery. Okay, so I was referring to citrulline malate here. Now, hydration, I think we've looked at this in detail, and more important, along with hydration, as I have already been mentioning, because even in team sports or racket sports, it's not just the water, but it's water along with electrolytes and definitely the carbohydrates, because it's the salt, it's the carbohydrate that also improves the absorption of water. Okay, so water alone is useless, because we've talked of exercise associated hyponatremia. Can anybody maybe share what that will be? EAH, in the chapter we studied in detail. When you have plain water, what is that going to do? It's going to dilute. Anybody? Thank you, Ansu. Sodium, yes. So because sodium is very important for muscle contraction. So if you overdrink plain water, it's going to lead to dilution of the water, and it's going to further lead or aggravate muscle cramps. So that is called exercise associated hyponatremia, and that is not useful for an athlete. Now, talking about the muscle cramps. Now, you will definitely hear athletes say, I had cramps, I cramped and I couldn't proceed, because these can be very, very painful. And muscle cramps can also occur because of the buildup of lactic acid. Now, lactic acid itself is because of, I think we have the next slide also based on that. Yeah. So we'll talk about lactic acid also in a bit. So muscle cramps itself is also due to the lack of electrolytes. And we now understand that it is not just the sodium, we need the potassium, we definitely need the magnesium, which is also an anti-stress mineral. So that can kind of ease the relaxation of the muscles and prevent cramping. So we've also talked of buffering agents in the past, and definitely an isotonic solution. How much is isotonic, guys? %, 6 to 8%. Very good, Luna. Yes, 6 to 8%. And also, can we have the buffering agents which we've already talked in the past? The buffering agents, anybody? Which will be the buffering agents helpful in these intermittent sports? We've looked at it in quite a few of the chapters in the past. Approved by the IOC consensus, evidence-based group A, AIS category 1. Anybody? We still have quite a few participants here. Beta alanine, thank you. One more. Just last class also we talked of beta alanine for endurance. Very good. Soda, cooking soda, very good. Sodium bicarbonate. Okay, thanks. So we'll move on. Also, depending on the humidity, meaning how hot the climatic condition is, and what is the temperature of the environment itself, then you also need to moderate the temperature intake, particularly because then that will help lower the core body temperature. Because if you see the cooling techniques, which we'll talk in just a bit, that can improve the performance in these sports. So what will be DOMS? Can anybody share what is DOMS? Soreness, yes, thanks, Amber. So that is muscle soreness, okay? Delayed onset muscle soreness. And how does that occur? And why does it occur? Delayed onset muscle soreness, yes. Great, we have some responses coming. So anytime that there is a high intensity workout and the muscles have really kind of been put through a strain, there is obviously a wear and tear. Okay, so due to which there is something called as a muscle pain or muscle soreness, typically that starts post workout after a few hours or the next day, and that is why it's called delayed onset, meaning that it may have happened to you too. If you're not somebody who exercises and you kind of indulged in, say, you went and played, say, basketball, and you're not somebody who actually plays that, but for fun you went to the court and you bounce the ball and dribble whatever, and then next day after that for 2 days you're going to be really sore. So that is delayed onset muscle soreness, and there are many strategies athletes can look at that, from cooling techniques to definitely the water electrolyte and massages. Today I think every athlete, if you see, there is so much focus not just on nutrition, but also they work with strength and conditioning coach, from the physiotherapist to definitely again massages are quite an integral part of professional athletes. So foam rolling is also another way of reducing the delayed onset muscle soreness, and not to forget the nutrition, because the right amount of intake of antioxidant fruit vegetables also can reduce delayed onset muscle soreness. Now we've also talked about this photograph. I'm sure everybody recognizes this because we've touched upon this topic, because based on the kind of sport, what does this photo refer to? Anybody? Red blood cells, yes. And we've also talked about it. So what happens in these kind of racket sports, or for that matter even in team sports like, say, basketball, volleyball, you have your beach volleyball. So what is happening there? At least beach there is sand, but like your handball, what in those kind of sports where there is, what is happening where there is a high impact, what is this condition called which impacts the RBCs or the red blood cells? Anybody? Okay, the foot strike hemolysis is very common in these kind of sports. So you have to inflammation. Yes, anytime there is a high intensity workout, definitely there is exercise induced inflammation. But foot strike hemolysis is because of the impact sports, there is going to be a breakdown of RBC, and that will lead to anemia. So you have to take care of these kind of athletes, where you are going to check with them and you look at their iron requirement, and particularly if they're vegetarian, females or vegans. We've talked about this in the micronutrient chapter in iron. So you have to take care of it, particularly in these kind of sports. And definitely, what is lactic acid buildup? Lactic acid buildup we just touched upon in the past, also for DOMS, for muscle cramps. Lactic acid is anaerobic metabolism. Okay, so anytime there is a high intensity workout and the body is working or the muscles are contracting, not only that, the anaerobic pathway, meaning the lack of oxygen itself, can lead to the buildup of lactic acid. That's one thing. But also the working of the muscle itself is using so much ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So the use of the ATP itself is leading to certain metabolites or some other byproducts. So similarly, there is AMP, which means that when the ATP is breaking down, and this AMP, adenosine monophosphate, or that itself is being deaminated, or it is being broken down, you also have the byproducts, which are ammonia, and you have say hydrogen ions. So lactic acid itself is made up of lactate and hydrogen ions. So hydrogen ions also, when they are released, they obviously lower the pH or the acidity of the environment, meaning that obviously there is going to be lowered pH, acidosis occurs. And that is where we say that sometimes if you hear athletes will say, I think I can't continue anymore, I need to stop, or I have a burning sensation. So that is nothing but the buildup of the lactic acid. And definitely we know now that it's not just the beetroot juice or other foods that increase the nitric oxide. and nitric oxide is a vasodilator. Also the breathing technique, very important, and also the fitness level of the athlete and how well they are trained and how they are able to adapt to the high training demand. And managing the muscle soreness with the everything is interrelated here, because if you have muscle soreness or DOMS, and that can also lead to or rather the lactic acid also leads to DOMS typically. Okay, so you have to kind of also manage with the buffering agents which we just talked about. Another way of looking at this is training periodization. So you have to also look at recovery, because many of these parameters are influenced also by the training load, because like I mentioned, the fitness level of the athlete itself is very important in order to manage these in these team sports and in racket sports. So like I talked about, the several interventions, not just in the food. Today we definitely have even these electronic intervention, which is meaning that you can you get these belts or electrodes where you just plug it in and you have these little electric waves that are sent in, and that can be useful. Compressive clothing, you get these compression shoes from socks, and definitely temperature, which is basically the cooling techniques, which can, if you see, even when you have cricketers or you have anybody who's doing team sports, you will see them dunk themselves with water, right? So the water itself, now recently we had Olympic Games, and you have seen that even in the racket sports, you have seen they coach always using a ice pack, okay, on the athlete's neck. So these are all the cooling techniques which are used, and they're very important for recovery. So quoting this research study here. So like I mentioned, how many of you think ice baths are important for recovery? Yes, one has raised the hand. Can we have the... Yes. Oh, five participants have raised hands. Okay, so are you sharing your questions in the chat box? Yes, very good, Amber. You're very well read. Ice baths actually delay training adaptations. Very good. That is true. But it also depends. If it's a very acute training phase and you have back-to-back training and you are severely sore and you have to go back to court or you have to go back to the field to train, then you rather be doing ice bath for 15-20 minutes, because it can improve your recovery. Sarvanan says it's good for rehabilitation. Okay. Yes, in injury management or in injury recovery, yes, ice baths can be important. So, but like we had just a recent, that was Amber, right, who said, right, Amber said that new research says ice delays recovery. Yes, so if you're looking for, say, increase in muscle mass, you want that muscle soreness, and you're able to deal with it and bear with it, and you are going through the training, and you're looking for body composition remodeling and training adaptations, then it can be very useful. So you have to live with the pain, okay, and just look at food and other natural things, but you may not need to do the soaking. Similarly, Epsom salt. How many of you believe Epsom salt can help recovery? Can we have responses? So these are all the different techniques, from chilled air, ice pack, using of ice, cooling vests, Epsom salt. Luna says yes. Anybody else? Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate. Yes, Sarvanan. Can we have responses? Salt, yeah. Anis says yes. So children, oh sorry, I'm here talking to the other kids now. So recovery process, there is not much research data to say that Epsom salt can improve magnesium absorption through skin. Rather, it's the hot water. So there is no research evidence to say that it is the Epsom salt that can improve the recovery process. Okay. So apart that, as with any guidelines in intermittent sports too, you have to not only look at the training, but definitely in context to the food, you have to look at the recovery process in terms of replenishing your glycogen stores, your protein, definitely for the repair. Guys, just give me 1 sec. So also rehydrate. And when you look at rehydration, what will be the amount of water recommended? Anybody? Okay, no response. So I'm assuming that everybody knows or is amount of water. I thought you guys wanted to keep it interactive. I just did not frame any questions this time. Water recommendation post-workout, guys. Very, very important. Because it is not just the important parameter to look at, say consuming 1.5 gram of protein, because if you're not hydrated enough, it is also going to lead to a lot of challenges in terms of clearing out the toxins itself. It can increase creatinine. 500 to 1000 ml. Do Amber, the guidelines were? Anybody? What were the guidelines? One time, at least one time. The amount of, yes, Yashaswini, thanks. At least 1 to 1.5. 1.5 may be the higher end, but at least equal amount of water that is lost. You remember we looked at it in detail to do the body mass, how you weigh yourself before, after. Now, we know that we have some research papers which have been published by also the wearable technology, where now athletes are able to kind of, bank on the artificial intelligence. And today you have all of these which are, you have waters, and which can you can sync that with your mobile phone, and you have data on, your heart rate from how you're sleeping, tracking so many things. So I think this is really, I don't know how many of you are already using this technology, or, typically now you see a lot of fancy watches everybody is wearing, from, not just like a pedometer, it tracks from your, the number of steps to so many things. And I think this is becoming extremely important for management of athletes' health, because, then you are able to improve their, not just their performance, but see, it even, I believe, detects the injury now. Fitness bands. Okay. Yes. Right. So we've talked of carbohydrate loading too. And in any team sport, if it is more than 90 minutes, that is where you have to look at probably a low fat, low fiber, and you do that 48 hours. We've done this in the past. You have to look at a high GI meal. Now, anybody is able to tell me what is the amount of carbohydrate present in a gel? See, because what is intra-workout? Say you are in between a very intense training and intra-workout. You have no access and time to sit and eat, say, a sandwich. We talked of the high molecular weight carbohydrate. 30 grams approx. Yes, very good, Amber. That can be 25 upwards, can be even 45. So it depends. Yes. What about the energy drinks, electrolyte solutions, hydration drink? 25 grams. Yes. I'm not sure what 1.5 stands for. 25 grams on an average and upwards too. Similarly, fluids. We've looked at this because very, very important. Also, the hydration during the workout, guys, also depends on so many drinking opportunity. I mean, every sport is different. So in some, like in, say, a racket sport, you may have opportunity to drink where you get a break after a set, whereas in team sports, typically either it may be half time, or and you don't have a choice but to sustain that longer duration, unlike where you are able to drink every 15-20 minutes or so. So it really, again, then those are the times where you have to kind of really plan your hydration strategy, because if you do not have the opportunity to drink, then you have to ensure that you hydrated even before you start your workout, because then your performance itself is also related to your hydration status. Because we've also studied about how, if you're dehydrated even less than 2%, or for that matter even 3% if it's a cooler environment, but if you have got inadequate sodium or salt in your diet, that can kind of again lead to an imbalance, and that is not what we want. So sodium, again, very, very important in not just your electrolyte solutions, but also in food, and even fluids can be anywhere upwards about 40-45 grams of carbohydrate, and they're all isotonic, meaning 6 to 8%. So here in this research study, we are looking at how this is, again, we already know now that in the sports food itself, these are very... Oh dear, Luna, you cannot look at only white part. 8 grams per day citrulline malate is a powder that comes as a supplement. And many pre-workout have different combinations, from caffeine, citrulline malate, you have arginine. Arginine also is similar, where it converts to nitric oxide. So you have different supplements. Yes, theanine, again, which is nothing but available in green tea. Yes, you have these because theanine also, not only that, it can prevent your fatigue. So for that reason, you have some combinations. So you have pre-workout combinations that are available, and these are all supplements that are consumed off the shelf. Because if you have to look at a target of 8 grams, you will have to be consuming, like, say like half a kg or something of a white portion of the watermelon rind. So it is not practical at all. Okay, so if you see here again, the nutrition strategies, sports supplements, which is typically your sports drink, gels, liquid meals, these are extremely good. If you again see here, we have caffeine, creatine, and buffering agents, which can be very useful in team sports. And we've talked about all of that. No problem, thanks. No, you're welcome. So guys, how much caffeine is required for athletes? And when will you take the caffeine? How much caffeine will be required? Very good, pre-event, yes, why not? Based on the need. Or say you're in a match, and would you need to take caffeine only pre-event? Guys, can we have responses? How much caffeine is needed? 200 grams plus. Oh my, that is intense. It's quite a heavy load. Oh, 10 grams. Oh my Lord. Okay. Guys, caffeine, will we need 10 grams? Okay, you can take in between the event. Excellent. Right answer. Very good. Guys, how much caffeine is needed? I think we've talked about it in the past. Oh, Mohammed says 200 mg, 0.2 gram. Okay. Caffeine guidelines. It's not gram. It is basically mg, milligram. No, Amber. Caffeine is not a diuretic. Alcohol is a diuretic. Caffeine used to be banned by WADA. Now today we know that it is a proven and a safe ergogenic aid. But we also have caffeine responders. We also have caffeine non-responders, meaning that somebody who's already used to taking coffee or caffeine can actually be used to that caffeine load. So somebody who's actually not using caffeine very often can actually have a better response. But it also depends again on how the athlete will be able to adapt to it. 400 mg, Oh, that is, yeah, Mohammed, very good. The guidelines of caffeine intake max limit for an individual is 400 mg a day. Okay. I think what I forget, is it 300 or 400 mg? Okay. I think it is 400 mg because 300 mg cholesterol is for a day, 400 mg caffeine. So if you see the IOC consensus statement, the caffeine needs to be anywhere between as little as 0.1 mg per kg body weight. So now guys, do the math. So if you're saying on an average about, say, we'll say 70 kgs of a male athlete, how much caffeine will we need if we do 0.1 mg caffeine per kg body weight? As little as that can improve or enhance the performance based as an ergogenic aid. How much will that be? Anybody? Come on, guys. Hey, how is it 7 mg? 0.1 mg per kg body weight. That'll be 70 mg, not 7 mg. Correct. So anywhere upwards. So if we do 0.2 mg per kg body weight, how much will that be, guys? Come on, we want some responses. Thank you, 140 mg, excellent. Very good. So, right, so as little as that. So tell us, now many of our participants are from all over India. How much will be one Kadak filter coffee? Or, you know, a nice strong, say, latte or whatever that is, one black coffee, espresso. How much will be the caffeine of an 200 mg? Yes, very good, Amber. On an average, a strong coffee could be anywhere from 150 to 200. Yes, Yashaswini says anywhere 180 to 250. Very good. So a strong coffee itself can be quite, you know, quite packed with caffeine. So do you think even our 70, 140 mg caffeine can be an ergogenic aid? Yes, it is, because that is how little it takes. Also, it depends on the level of the athlete and how much the athlete can respond. Is he jittery? Does he have palpitation? Because caffeine is a stimulant, central nervous system stimulant, meaning that if the athlete can have a very negative response to it, is agitated, is edgy, can have palpitations, increased heartbeat, is not able to perform better, is nervous, you think it is helpful to use caffeine in that kind of an athlete? No. So you have to really kind of see and personalize and, you know, try that with an athlete in the training session to see how is the athlete responding. Is it helpful? Is it not helpful? Either are the time trials yielding better results, and how is he feeling, more importantly? That is very important. Now, creatine, anybody can tell me which form of creatine is good? Creatine, we've talked about creatine, I think, in the past also. So very, very helpful for high intensity workout, particularly in intermittent sports, from, you know, racket and field sports. Very, very suitable. Monohydrate is good because that is quite economical, very effective, highly absorbed. Very good. That is a good option. Creatine monohydrate. Okay, highly researched too. So creatine monohydrate. Now, guys, how much of creatine will be consumed? How much will an athlete do? What is the protocol? So thanks. We have a lot of responses coming. Can we have all the participants? We have almost 60 guys here. Can we have different guys also respond? I'm seeing the same guys responding. Finally, different name. Mohammed, Imran, thank you. 5 grams. Okay, 5 grams on an average. 3 to 5 grams is what we can take daily. Oh, very nice. Loading dose 20 grams. Excellent. So creatine also holds water. A creatine molecule, okay, though it feeds creatine phosphate, okay, that is what is PC, the phosphagen pathway, which we saw in the first sprinting of the 10-15 seconds. You have the creatine phosphate pathway without depending on oxygen, which gives the or donates the phosphate molecule for ATP regeneration. Okay, that is why creatine is very useful in high intensity sprints, and it's very, very good for intermittent sports like team and racket sports. So you can do a loading protocol if you have the time. So that will be, again, you could do a split dose of 10 grams, maybe 2 times. Okay, and that can be for about what, 5 odd days. You can also do just a maintenance dose based on the athlete's requirement, about 3 to 5 grams a day. Now, it's also important to remember vegetarian athletes respond to creatine better, because if you're already consuming a large amount of, say, red meat, you can get anywhere from 1 to 2 grams of creatine from non-veg, particularly red meat itself. Now, also creatine, when we do weight restricted sports, which is our last chapter, you'll realize, because creatine will also hold water. Every molecule of creatine, I think, holds what? I think about more than 2.7 or whatever, okay, molecules of water, which means that you will automatically have weight gain, which can be anywhere upwards half kg, 500 grams to 1 kg increase in the body weight. And that is not helpful for somebody who is in a weight category sport. Though, like even a rower needs creatine, because if he is kind of in those sprints, he really can benefit from creatine, but it really depends on what time he is using, because creatine is very slow to getting assimilated into your muscle, meaning it takes almost close to a month for it to be fully pumped up into your muscle, where you can see the benefits of it and the result, even if you do particularly the slow usage of 3 to 5 grams per day. So you can't say I have a competition tomorrow and I will just use creatine today 20 grams and I'm going to be like one dynamic all totally sparked up. So it's a very slow process. Okay, so that's creatine. Now sodium bicarbonate, we've talked of it. So guys, sodium, can we have some inputs on sodium bicarbonate? How do we look? Because I know I've talked about it also in the past, I think. For endurance, yes, we have beta-alanine and sodium bicarbonate, the buffering agents. So how will this buffering agent be useful for athletes in high intensity sports? Yes, definitely it will improve in performance, no doubt. And one of the, again, very highly evidence-based proven supplement. How will it improve the supplement performance? What will be the amount that we can use? It balances pH, excellent. Yes, it's a buffering agent, meaning it will neutralize. Luna, what will it neutralize? Because intermittent sports means there is a lot of high intensity activity, sprinting, running. So anaerobic pathway, yes, because there is ATP breakdown, there is also deamination of the AMP, so ammonia builds up, lactic acid is also, because of the anaerobic metabolism, we have lactic acid, lactate and hydrogen ions. Hydrogen ions contribute to lowered pH, so tiredness, fatigue. So that is the challenge. About 10 grams, not bad, Ansu, good guess. So sodium bicarb, okay, I forget now what is the minor breakup for per kg body weight. So approximately a tablespoon, 15 to 18 grams is what we use. So how can you use, because it is cooking soda. Has anybody tried eating salt or soda just like that? So how will you use the sodium bicarbonate? Can we have some responses? In water. Oh, very good, Imran. Excellent. You use with lot of water. Very good. Drinking soda. Excellent. That's the right thing. Dilute with water. Very good. Okay. Typically the water, fruit juice. But fruit juice, imagine if fruit juice will be sweet and then you have the salt taste, unless and until you like that mixture of that, like that little lemonade where it's salty and sweet, good for you. Yes, water. Very good. So when will you consume the baking soda? Oh, and another thing about caffeine, which I forgot to touch upon, guys, you don't necessarily need to take caffeine before workout. You can also take caffeine at a point where you're hitting the wall, meaning that you kind of so fagged out and fatigued and you are unable to push yourself. But also remember, caffeine takes time for absorption, meaning Tmax. You cannot say that, okay, I have endured my workout or I've been in the field for about, say, 1 hour. You cannot say, oh, I will take it now at 1 hour. You need to plan in a way that you are allowing enough time for the caffeine to be absorbed into the blood, because it may take time for it to be absorbed. So that's something also to remember. And you can also do it somewhere towards the second half, where you kind of want that stimulus of your central nervous system, which can push you. Okay, so that was one aspect of caffeine which I did not mention. Balances pH, okay, drinking soda, water, it can relieve gas, acidity, etc. also, ma'am. So is Luna also giving us a suggestion? I'm assuming she's suggesting that when you, yes, I mean, considering stomach acids are HCl, and the pH of the stomach is, I think, what, 2? So yes, if at all you suffer from that, considering going by the logic, this is alkaline, it can neutralize that. Bakery foods such as bread, oh, interesting, I like that. Suprabha, thanks for the input. Because any baked product, good thinking. So any baked product obviously has a baking soda, okay, baking powder, which is nothing but again sodium bicarbonate. So interesting. So that can be a good use of consuming foods too. So guys, I asked you, what time should you consume this soda? Oh, interesting, soda. Okay, use it with soda, fine. That is what, carbonated water, right? Pre-workout, during workout. Okay guys, you don't do sodium bicarbonate during workout, you always do sodium bicarbonate before the workout. Oh, I'm loving all these responses, finally they're just coming in. So but remember to space 1 to 2 hours. You remember also to take smaller amounts of it, because it is salt. It can irritate your stomach lining and you will vomit. Okay, it's very nauseating. So you have to be very careful. Load up with a lot of water. So meaning that, the recommended, like I told you, even 18 grams, which is a heaped tablespoon, it's a lot of salt. If you take that in one shot, you will vomit. Okay, I don't know if you kind of paid heed, anybody who had swallowed, if you see in the movies to any kind of, I don't know if you remember any anecdotal data where if you have anybody who's consumed something which is harmful, the first thing they do is pump in saline water to flush out all the entire gut constituents. So that can irritate the gut and they use it to wash out. Okay, so if you do not do that with water, so 1 to 2 liters of water, you have to space it out, split the dose and take it in small bits with lot of water. Yes, black coffee shot also is helpful, very good, but very difficult to quantify. So because the caffeine content in instant coffee varies, it is not much. You also need larger dosage of the coffee shot. So that way the coffee shots are a little bit more tricky, because you really can't quantify or say this is the amount of caffeine I have consumed. So that really depends. So intra-workout, intra-workout, yes, Amber. So even sodium bicarbonate, guys, in smaller bits can be used in your your hydration solutions, because now we know that, but particularly it is helpful in endurance events. So considering, if your team event is getting over, say 1.5 hours, you may not really need it unless and until it gets pushed beyond that. That is where you can use this in intra workout. Okay, so okay guys, we've talked of beta alanine in VBIT, right? Anybody is able to share some inputs on this? Beta alanine, we've already done this last time too. Anybody? I don't even know how many more slides I have. All right, can we have the responses coming? How much beta alanine we need to take? Buffering agent, very good. We talked of it to prevent. What is a buffering agent, guys? Oh, 1 to 2 gram. That's a very minute dose, actually. Ah, very nice. New names, I see. Good, Hanif. Thanks for responding. About 5 to 6 grams is safe. But guys, Anis says 4 to 6. Oh wow, we have a lot of experts now. Thanks, Anis. I'm getting worried. Thank God I prepared my presentation well and I read up enough. We have everybody responding. So beta alanine, I talked about it even for endurance events, and nice to see responses coming. And is that 2.5, Mohammed, or is it 25? So 2 to 5. Okay, good start. Starting with the doses, starting with his doses. Tingling sensation, right? Amber remembers. So we are all high here. Is that what Amber is saying? What is Anis saying? We are all noobs here. So probably you'll have to educate me more on that. Okay, so guys, beta alanine can lead to paresthesia. Oh, beginner, thank you. Okay, nice, but good to have a participate in class. You know, it's so much joyful when everybody is involved, and you know, it gives me a feeling like as it is, I miss the class session where we are, you know, in person and we could interact. It's a different feel, but you know, on the laptop, the only connection between you and me is this chat box right now. So it's wonderful to see all these responses coming, and I'm enjoying it. Thank you. So so beta alanine will neutralize the lactic acid buildup. So very helpful, particularly in the high intensity workout, because we've seen how the lactic acid is generated itself. So beta alanine can kind of prevent that and balance it out, because then it's a cascading effect of the lactic acid. Then there is cramping, the issue, and typically also delayed or a lowered thwarted performance. So beta alanine converts to carnosine, meaning that it can kind of neutralize the lactic acid. Now let me guys, most important here in these kind of intermittent sports also, depending on the training load, if the immunity is compromised because of, say, poor recovery or a very erratic training load, that can lead to upper respiratory tract infections. So we now know from research that the probiotics, and this probiotic itself, I can talk about half an hour. One of you can remind me, maybe in the last day session, I also want to give some game day guidelines, because we only have 2 more sessions, right? So in the game day guidelines, one of you can remind me and we can talk a little more on probiotics, because from food itself, there's so much we can manage, from prebiotic, probiotic, now symbiotics, we know now postbiotics. So how it can improve the gut brain axis. With the coronavirus, we've even talked about the gut and the lung axis of how that's what I'm referring to, where you have good amount of fermented foods, and that can prevent the upper respiratory tract infection. This I'm sure everybody will be able to give me inputs. Glutamine, why will intermittent sports, or why will athletes in this particular line of sports need glutamine? Gut immunity. Yes, glutamine and arginine, I think they're semi-essential amino acid, and they're particularly important for gut immunity. Theoretically, yes, for somebody who's had burns, who's chronically ill, who really has a genuine need for glutamine. But now we know that, yes, very good. There are a lot of responses coming. Excellent. It is okay. Anti-catabolic. Is that glutamine? Maybe in some way, because glutamine is already available if you consume, say, a whey protein or a combination of high quality, high biological value protein. There is some amount of glutamine that will anyway come from it. And I think it is a non-essential amino acid, meaning that the body can convert it. But what happens is, yes, and it's anti-inflammatory. So whenever there is a huge buildup of ammonia, or where there is a intense training load, typically as seen in intermittent sports, the glutamine can be of use, particularly if an athlete has poor recovery, has incidences of lowered immunity, and is falling ill. So in order to compensate that peak training load, or a pre-competition season or a competition season, at that time it is periodized, and you may not need it all the time. Okay, so just a quick overview of what happened with this badminton player that I observed. Glutamine can promote sleep. Is Amber, are you saying, or are you saying, or are you asking? Can promote good sleep, glutamine, but sleep is very complicated. So it's not just glutamine. Yeah, typically, see, glutamine can be played along and used in many times. It can be used, in the day, pre-workout, bedtime for recovery. So it really depends. So glutamine, 5 grams a day. But now we know that glutamine itself can be poorly absorbed, and okay, sure, we are winding up at 5:30, Janvi. Hardly time up, na? Another barely few minutes. We can wind up before that. Okay, is Janvi here? Janvi is here, no? Okay, so guys, glutamine also, we know that we may need upwards even up to 20 gram. Some of the supplements also, kindly remember that there is a challenge of absorption and bioavailability. So not what you read and see the guidelines, because if you see, then you know, you may need larger doses too. So up to 20 grams can be taken based on the need of every athlete. So now with this badminton player, I noticed that you know, because a young adolescent boy and would always have cramping, because badminton is also quite a demanding sport, and when you play sets, after a few sets, if you're not taken care, you can really kind of, you know, burn out. So that's where you like really look at your energy drink, your sports drink, of course, in the competition cycle, otherwise it's not needed. But most importantly, as simple as just looking at your gels, your energy drink itself can kind of, you know, improve this. You know, I noticed that with this athlete overnight, you know, the issue of cramping just totally got subsided. And obviously, once you are able to run around and sprint more, automatically you have better and not this alone. I mean, we do a lot of other things. So this is one of the aspect, hydration. But if you look at all that we've been discussing, which is quite intense actually, and you all are very fortunate to get this kind of first-hand information. Amber says it improves GABA, which helps sleep. Okay, so also, like I mentioned, this is interesting input. So thanks for letting me know. Okay, so but sleep again in athletes is because if you see when they train so high and they're training sometimes as late as 8:30, 9, 10. Honestly, at that kind of an intense level, when the training has been so, your metabolism is all kicked up, and you know, you kind of have barely time to unwind. So, you know, I don't know if that 5 gram of glutamine alone is enough to kind of get you to sleep, because sometimes athletes sleep lesser. I don't know how many of you know that. Okay, so athletes have a very less sleep time duration typically, at least in my practice. I do see that, unless and until they have the day off and they make up for it as sleep debt. Otherwise, yeah, there's a challenge. So like I also said, glutamine 5 grams alone may not be enough, so sometimes you may need larger doses too. Melatonin only, melatonin, see what happens with magnesium. Thank you. Who's that? Amber. Okay, good input. Okay, so what happens with melatonin is a precursor, like even serotonin for that matter. Melatonin only helps you induce sleep. But then, you know, how much will it sustain you to sleep through the night is, I think that is, yeah, there is not much data to conclusively say that. And with ZMA, what happens is, I think we know now that it is magnesium that can, for that matter, even tart cherry, a lot of research has been done on tart cherry juice, magnesium and sleep quality. Okay, so, all right. So as we always say, definitely focus on food first, because I'm a dietitian. I will never say, you know, kind of get obsessed about supplements. Supplements come at the top of the pyramid, meaning that you got to look at your lifestyle, food, hydration always. And that is our occupational hazard as a dietitian. So please correct your food intakes first, and only then top it up with, you know, like the icing on the cake. Supplements always come last. Okay, and for those of you who are interested, okay, guys, and also please, I have been repeatedly requesting if anybody has suggestions, even because I have not got any feedback so far. And Janvi, I have not received your email nor your feedback for all these sessions. I've sent you 2 emails. So I have no idea if the participants are sharing feedback with Janvi. I have not received them. So please send me a direct email, and that will be very helpful for me to also understand if you have any concerns or you have any constructive suggestion for me with whatever little class is remaining. Okay, and those of you who would like to follow me, please do. And okay, I have also shared. Oh, there are several brands of these. I've also shared my email, and if anybody has a feedback, please do email me. All right. So are we good to wind up for today?
Yes, yes. Actually, the feedback link is generated by the our faculty mentor, and he has restricted to Oro faculty, so we are not able to see that. So I have to change that, format. Secondly, all the participants, if you have any feedback, you can WhatsApp me and I'll share it with Geeta. Or you can share in the WhatsApp group and I'll share it with her if in case in any feedback for the next session. And
Oh,
yes,
right. Because I only want to know how the sessions are going. Are the participants liking the session? Are
they
they?
are liking very much. I'm getting so many, good feedback, and I'm unfortunately not able to share that
Okay, somebody
feedback.
is asking me about growth hormone suppression. Oh, yes, I will be very happy to explain. So, Amber, I sent a message to Janvi and told her to share it on your WhatsApp group. So, she must be awfully busy. So,
No, I have shared it. I have shared it.
okay, so Amber is asking. So growth hormone, see what happens with growth hormone is a high. See, like somebody was talking of the quality of sleep. Now we already know, Janvi. If you know, I'll wind up and you can kindly, if you don't mind, because Janvi has another meeting. So Janvi, you can leave.
I can't leave because I'm the host. So if I leave, then all the session will be end. No problem, I'm here.
Okay, should I take this question in the next class?
If you can, it would be really grateful.
Okay. All
Sure.
right. So Amber, you can write to me also. You have my email ID. Okay. So growth hormone, high glycemic index carbohydrate is very important to improve sleep quality because that is what speeds serotonin. Okay, from oats, banana to so many things, from even milk. If you see warm milk, which was very classically seen in the Hindi movies, right? So tryptophan also converts to serotonin. So they're very important to induce sleep and definitely look at recovery. But however, based on what the athlete wants, I had already messaged Janvi about this. Growth hormone can be lowered when you take a high GI meal, but you just space it out. So try and do that according to the circadian rhythm. Do it at dusk time so that you have 2-3 hours gap at bedtime. In any case, the growth hormone comes back, it's secreted only in the night. So that's the way to do that. Okay, Luna says lovely session. Okay, thanks guys. I hope because if anybody has a feedback or any suggestion to make, if you want me to improve my style of my presentation or include something, please send me a direct email so that I know what you all want. Okay, I'm hoping everybody is listening. Okay, bye guys.
Thank you so much for wonderful session, Geeta. And now we have 2 more sessions left.
Right.
Fine. So see you all guys. You
Thanks.
can share your feedback with me. I'll share it with Geeta. And I'll share the feedback link in the WhatsApp group.
Oh yes, thanks guys. Thanks, Anis. Happy to hear a nice session. But yeah, I am getting worried. You all are liking or not liking. Send me an email if you have any suggestions to make. Okay, you have my email ID. Okay, Yusuf says thanks. Okay, guys. One gentleman sent me an email. Okay, last week. Thank you so much to that guy. Thanks. Okay, bye guys. Bye everybody.
Okay. Bye. Good night.
Thank you, Divesh. Bye.